picked up my dropped USB, then watched what we'd been filming for months. Nico and I had always been very different people. We had different ways of thinking and hardly ever liked the same things. Despite that, though, we still made it work. When I first met him, almost 6 years ago now, I thought there was no way we'd end up dating, much less married. I'd always been more loose and carefree while he was pretty by the book. We met at a party a mutual friend threw during our last year of college. When he'd introduced me to Nico, I was barely paying attention. I completely wrote him off. It was hard not to. Back then, he was this scrawny, awkward guy who wore glasses a little too big and hardly ever talked to anyone. I wasn't attracted to him, and I wasn't interested in speaking to him. I remember my friends literally laughing in the corner because I had been the one forced to interact with him that night, while everyone else kind of just ignored him. The whole thing made me pity him a little, and that was why I even bothered actually trying to talk to him. My plan was to just ask him how he was doing, and if he was enjoying himself, and then no matter the answer, I would just make up some excuse to walk away from him. But then he surprised me by seeming completely uninterested in talking to me when I tried to speak to him. There I was, expecting to suffer through like 5 minutes of awkward conversation for his benefit. Meanwhile, he seemed like he didn't even want to be around me. He said he didn't need my pity, and that I didn't have to talk to him if I didn't want to. It completely threw me off. I didn't know what to say. He had seen right through me, and it was kind of jarring. He was arrogant in a way that felt undeserved, and it should have put me off even more, but in a weird way, it didn't. I'd always been attracted to super confident guys. My friends would say that I just gravitated toward assholes, but that wasn't true. I just liked a man who thought highly of himself. My type physically, though, had always been more muscular, bigger guys who looked like models in trouble at the same time. Nico was nothing like that, but the way he spoke to me, ironically, made him more interesting. I was curious about him, so I told him that I did want to talk to him, and though he looked shocked, he nodded his head. We talked for a bit, and I was surprised by how much the conversation between us just flowed easily. I was shocked by the fact that he was funny and didn't take things too seriously like I'd previously thought. To everyone's surprise, we talked for hours that night, and we just never stopped. We exchanged numbers. He asked to hang out with me the next day. I agreed, and that was that. But like I said, we were different. That party was probably one of the only ones Nico had been to his entire time at college. But for me, it had probably been my 5th one that week. There's no other way to say it other than I like to go out. I like to party. There was just something about loud music and people dancing around me that just put me in a good mood. Nico never understood that. What put him in a good mood was a quiet night in, a great movie, or a really nice dinner. It's not like he never went out or anything. It's just that it just wasn't his thing. Despite that, though, he was never controlling or judgmental. He wasn't interested and didn't understand my want for more nightlife and events, but he never tried to stop me or make me feel bad for it. He was a lot of things. He could be arrogant and annoyingly rigid at times, but he was also very logical. He didn't believe that him not enjoying something should mean that I shouldn't enjoy it too. We both accepted that we were different and never tried to change the other person. It was why our relationship worked so well, and why our marriage did too. We had a perfect balance. I went out a few times a week. Me and my friends would hit up different bars and clubs. We would spend the whole night outside and get completely wasted. I was free to drink and dance and flirt with random men whenever I could, and Nico never really had a problem with it so long as I came back to him in the end. Usually, after a particularly intense night out where I came back super drunk and messy, forcing him to take care of me and put me to bed, I would make it up to him by spending an entire evening or day with him doing whatever he wanted. That was it. It was pretty unconventional, but it was what worked for us and what kept our relationship so strong after years. It was all perfect. I was with a man that I loved and who let me be myself, no matter how wild and crazy that self might have seemed to other people. It was the best situation in marriage I could have hoped for. Or at least it was until a few months ago when he started talking about the possibility of us starting a family. I'd never really wanted to be or imagined becoming a mother, so I wasn't a fan of the idea, but I was willing to consider it. Having a baby was never really in the picture for me, but for him, I said I'd think about it, and that should have been enough. But as time passed, he didn't just talk about a baby. He started to bring up how I needed to control myself and take it easy and be more serious if I was really going to consider becoming a mom. For the first time ever, it felt like he was judging me, like everything we agreed on and everything that made us us didn't matter anymore. Out of nowhere, he wanted to rearrange our entire marriage, and worse, he wanted me to give something up to do it. I was the one who was going to have to sacrifice not only my body, but my lifestyle for something that only he wanted. He would have to give up nothing. It just didn't seem fair. But things just completely flew off the rails when I tried to explain that to him. I wasn't even trying to start a fight. I was super calm about it when I just told him that it felt unfair, and like I was the one expected to lose everything while he got to keep living exactly how he always had. I told him that if this was something he wanted, then maybe he needed to acknowledge how much he was asking of me instead of judging me. He got quiet for a second after that, and just stared at me for what felt like too long. Then he said, "You know, you're so selfish. You always act like the world revolves around you." "What?" I asked. It was all I could ask after he had said something like that to me. "You heard me," he said, crossing his arms. "You're being selfish. All you ever think about is yourself. It's always about your wants and your comfort. I'm your husband, and somehow I'm never the priority." I felt my face heat up in that moment from how angry I was. "Are you kidding me? I didn't realize I married a child that I have to coddle every 2 seconds. He frowned, and his jaw was clenched tight. I knew he was very offended, but I didn't care. I had to defend myself. "No, seriously, Nico," I continued. "You dump this huge thing on me and then get upset when I actually react like a human being? Sorry I'm not jumping up and down at the idea of completely changing my life." We went back and forth like that for a while, throwing sharp little jabs and insults at each other. It wasn't even about the baby anymore. It was obvious that he had been harboring this resentment towards me for a while, and the fight was the perfect way for him to finally speak his mind. It was such a cowardly thing to do. We were in the middle of trying to talk over each other when he said something that made everything stop. "You were going to have to give up that lifestyle eventually anyway, so what's the big deal?" That confused me and made me pause for a moment. "What are you talking about?" He sighed like I was the dramatic one. "Going out all the time, partying, and just doing whatever you want. It was all right in the beginning, but you have to know that it doesn't look good if my wife acts like this." The words hit me so hard I actually laughed. It was humorless and bitter. "Your wife?" I repeated. "Is that all I am? It's not like I'm my own person or anything?" "That's not what I meant," he said quickly. But I wasn't listening. I was hurt, and the anger was getting the better of me. "So what? You just assumed that because you gave me the great honor of becoming your wife, I'd magically change for you? You've just been hoping that one day I'd wake up and stop wanting the things that make me happy?" "I thought you'd want to be better, or at least grow up," he said. And the way he said it was almost like he was scolding me, like I was some rebellious teenager. It was humiliating. And hearing him, the man I genuinely thought understood me better than anyone else, confessed that he'd always expected me to become someone else eventually, someone better, hurt more than ever. I didn't even know how to process it or what to say. We didn't argue often, and whenever we did, it was usually something stupid that we resolved within an hour. It was never anything serious, nothing that couldn't be undone. But that night, nothing got fixed. I walked away without saying another word to him, and we didn't speak again that night. Because for the first time since I met Nico, I didn't feel understood or accepted. I felt like something he'd always been ashamed of. The morning after that fight wasn't great. Things were tense in a way I'd never felt with him before. Everything felt stiff and cold. He didn't apologize, and I didn't either. Not because I didn't want to fix things, but because I couldn't bring myself to pretend everything he said didn't cut deeper than he seemed to realize. Each time I replayed his words, I felt even worse. It was awful knowing how he really saw me and knowing that he had only ever tolerated me. I never imagined he would turn on me like that. Nico had always been the one person I thought actually understood and never judged me. I thought that he knew exactly who I was and loved me anyway. I used to think that was what made our relationship so great. I thought it was all thanks to our mutual understanding of each other, but now I know that I was naive. He didn't understand me at all. He was just being patient. He'd never seen me the way I saw myself, someone free, open, and not willing to be too tied down. He saw someone immature and temporary, someone who needed to grow up and transform into this image of what he thought a wife should be. That realization didn't just upset me, though. It pissed me off. And as the days passed, I only got angrier. The more he acted like I was the one in the wrong, the more I felt that anger settle deeper in my chest. With each morning, he walked past me without saying anything, and each night we slept far away from each other. That resentment only grew, and I knew it would eventually bubble over. I was spiteful, and I wanted to punish him in some way. So I thought the best way would be to embarrass him even more. He thought I was selfish and that I needed to grow up. So I decided to be exactly who he thought I was. And I started going out even more. I started saying yes to all of my friends' plans and everything that I was invited to. Soon, I was spending every night out of the house. I did it to spite him, and I did it to get away from him. I did it because I didn't feel accepted in my own home, so I went to the only places where I was sure that I would be. For days, I went to club after club with my friends and was as reckless as I could be. I partied in a way I hadn't since I was in college and since before we got married. Most nights that I would come back drunk and out of it, Nico would be asleep. But there were some times when I would come back looking a mess, and he would be there waiting for me. He wouldn't say or do anything. He would just watch me and make it obvious that he now disapproved of what I was doing. His attitude had the opposite effect, though, and it only made me want to go out even more, just to show him that he couldn't control me and that I wouldn't be what he wanted. This went on for weeks. Both of us were in a kind of stalemate and just hovering around each other, angry, but also not wanting to apologize. Eventually, Nico was the one that caved. Again, our relationship wasn't traditional. I was the more dominant one in the marriage. He was used to taking care of me and catering to me in a way. So after a while, and almost like he couldn't help himself, he kind of just fell back into that role. He didn't apologize at first, but he showed me that he was sorry when he started taking care of me when I got back from nights out again. He would make sure I ate something, and he would help me take a shower before helping me get in bed. Eventually, though, he did apologize, and he told me that he was sorry for what he said and the way he went about things. He said that we could wait to start a family until I was ready, and that he wouldn't hold it against me if it was something I eventually decided that I didn't want. I appreciated his words, and I forgave him for what he did, but honestly, the damage was already done. I just couldn't see him the same way, and I knew, even when I hugged and kissed him back after we made up, that our relationship probably wouldn't go back to the way things were. But it wasn't just because of the things he had said, though. I knew things could never be the same, because to an extent, I liked our time apart. I liked how truly free I was, and how I could just be myself without any hang-ups or reservations. It felt amazing, and I just wasn't sure I wanted to go back to the way things were. So I didn't. Even after we patched things up, I continued to go out as intensely as I was while we were fighting, which was practically every night. It was easy enough because I barely worked. I was a freelancer, and had had a few temp jobs over the years, but never anything too serious. Nico remained the main breadwinner of the marriage. That all made it so easy for me to fully devote myself to having the best time that I could every night. I could tell that Nico didn't like it, and that he was hoping things would go back to normal after he apologized, but he never brought it up. He didn't want to cause another fight or upset me. And aside from the rare snide comments he would make here and there, things between us kind of reached a good point. Not the way it used to be, but some new kind of normal. That was until one night at the club that changed everything and made me discover a part of myself that ruined my life. It had started like any other night, loud music, low lighting, and lots of alcohol. I was completely in my element. My friends and I were already more than tipsy by the time we stepped onto the dance floor. I was my usual flirty self through it all. I leaned too much into the attention and let men buy me drinks even though I'd already had too much. But then there was this one guy. He kind of stood out amongst the rest, and he kept watching me from the bar. It took him a while of just staring before he finally downed his drink and came up to me. I barely even remembered what he said when he came up to me. He talked for a bit, but I was pretty out of it and couldn't hold on to his words. I remember him introducing himself as Aaron, and then asking if I wanted to dance. He was handsome and charming, so I didn't think twice. We danced for a while. I'd danced with random guys on nights out before, but that was the first time I'd ever gotten that close. His hands were on my waist, and mine were around his shoulders. The moment felt electric in a way I couldn't really understand. The air between us was charged as we got a little handsy. His fingers traced the small of my back, and I let mine slide up the back of his neck. We were moving like people who knew exactly where that kind of dancing led. We were completely pressed together, and I knew it was inappropriate, but I didn't stop. But I knew my boundaries, and eventually I pulled away. I flirted around, sometimes a little too much, but I never crossed the line and got too physical. I couldn't stop thinking about him as I made my way back to my friends, though. My heart was still racing from the heat and the attention. I didn't even realize just how intense things had gotten between us until my friend Thea, who always recorded everything, grabbed my arm the second I reached the booth and shoved her phone in my face. "Oh my God, you look so good under the lights," she told me. "Just look at this picture." I laughed and leaned in, expecting some blurry pic from earlier of me in the middle of the dance floor with my hair all over the place. But it wasn't that. It was me and Aaron, pressed together like two people about to take each other's clothes off right there in front of everyone. His hands were on my waist, and my face was like an inch away from his. It looked like we were about to kiss, or do much worse. The photo made my stomach flutter in a way that was unexpected. It also made me feel a bit panicky, so I quickly told her to delete it and watched her go through with it. But even after the photo was gone, I kept seeing it in my head. Seeing me, the picture was practically burned into my brain. I kept thinking back to the way I'd looked in it and the way my body curved against his. I couldn't stop thinking about how alive I looked. It horrified me at first because I'd never seen myself do something like that, or imagined I'd let myself get that close to crossing that line. I sat in the back seat of our ride back with my heart pounding as I thought about the danger of what I'd almost done. I felt guilt and confusion. I felt a lot of things. But as I stared out the window, all I could see was that picture, and I was shocked to find that the more I thought about it, the less horrified I felt. The guilt and the panic kind of faded away until all that was left was excitement. I was excited in a way I couldn't really explain, in a way that had nothing to do with Aaron himself, and everything to do with how I looked in that moment. Even when I was laying in bed that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was so consumed by it that I forgot all about Nico. I didn't think about how close I came to betraying him or how he'd react. All I could think about was me and how much I wanted to see myself like that again. Suddenly there was this wild, reckless, and somehow even more beautiful version of myself that I didn't even know existed until I saw her on my friend's phone, and I wanted to see her again. And that was where everything started. Not with the alcohol or the dancing with Aaron, but with the picture. The picture that made me want more. A week later, when my friend suggested we go back to the same club, I didn't even pretend to hesitate. I knew Aaron might be there, and that was enough incentive. I knew what being around him could pull out of me, and I wanted to experience it again. I spotted him almost the second we stepped inside. He was leaning against the bar and sipping his drink, looking like he had been waiting for me or something. Something inside me lit up, and I immediately went to him. He bought me drinks without asking, like he already knew me, and we talked and flirted in this way that felt easy and familiar, if only a little bit careless. It should have been harmless like all the other times I'd flirted with guys and let them buy me drinks, but it wasn't. With Aaron, everything felt different and a whole lot more intense because he brought out something in me that felt new and exciting. Some part of me I hadn't explored yet, but desperately wanted to. So when Aaron asked if I wanted to step outside for some air, I nodded, even though I knew eBay going outside and being alone with him could lead to. When we got outside, we still talked for a bit, but the conversation suddenly felt empty, like we were both trying stall and lead up to the inevitable. Eventually, though, he dropped the pretenses and kissed me. I kissed him back, and it felt so good in that moment, but I almost felt dizzy. We kissed for a while. I completely got lost in it, and all the tension between us. And then out of nowhere, I felt this sudden urge, this impulse that made zero sense but felt completely right in the moment, to see myself like I had before, to see myself when I completely let go and did what I wanted. So I pulled out my phone and hit record before I kissed him again. He laughed when he saw me but didn't complain, and we continued to kiss as I recorded. When we pulled away, I watched the video I had made, and I instantly felt that same sharp excitement I had felt with the picture Thea had taken. Seeing us together like that filled me with a rush stronger than all the alcohol I had drank. But it didn't feel like enough, not even close. I didn't just want the moment. I wanted the whole experience of it preserved so I could go back and watch myself being bold and reckless in a way I hadn't ever been. I don't even remember consciously making the decision. I just remember the moment I grabbed his hand and tugged him back inside, weaving through the crowd until we reached the bathroom. I set up my phone again so we were perfectly in frame, and I locked the door. Then we were all over each other again. Aaron didn't ask questions or act weirded out. He was too busy taking off my clothes and getting his hands all over me. The sex was rushed and desperate. It wasn't that great, but I didn't care. It almost felt like that wasn't even really the point. When it was done, I waited until I said goodbye to Aaron before I grabbed my phone and watched the whole thing like I hadn't just lived through it. It almost didn't feel like me. It kind of felt like I was watching some alter ego who was impulsive and completely detached from the life I had with Nico. I'd never understood why people filmed sex tapes until that moment, because watching that video back was unlike anything I'd ever felt. The feeling seeing myself like that gave me was strong enough to drown out every thought of Nico and every thought about betrayal. And all I could think about was how I wanted to see more of myself like that. It was like something had cracked open in me and a different side of me spilled out, a side that didn't care about consequences and took whatever she wanted like the world really did revolve around her. And once she came out, it was like there was no putting her away again. I didn't plan for it to turn into a double life. I promised myself it wouldn't happen again, and that it would just be that one time with Aaron. But then as time passed, I started to crave that feeling again. Whenever I did, I would watch the video just to get even a fraction of that feeling again, but it wasn't enough. And eventually, it all happened again. I went to the same club, met Aaron there, and then before I knew it, we were in the bathroom, and I had set up my phone again. After that, it started to become more of a regular thing. What scared me was how natural it all became. I'd always had boundaries I stuck to without even thinking. I used to flirt because I liked the attention, but it never went further than that. It was always just something harmless I could turn off whenever I wanted. But after that second night with Aaron, those boundaries just collapsed. At first, it was just Aaron. He and I kept in touch and would meet up every other week. We mostly met at the club, but eventually things progressed to me going over to his apartment. What we had was casual and familiar, so I told myself that meeting up with only him somehow made it less wrong. But that lie only lasted a short while, because it didn't take long before it wasn't just him anymore. Weeks with Aaron meant that I had amassed a lot of videos with the two of us. I watched them back whenever I got the chance, but after a while, the videos with Aaron didn't hit the same as they used to. I wanted more. I wanted something new and more exciting. So that was when I started drifting. I started crossing lines with the other guys that flirted with me and bought me drinks. I started picking up strangers whose names I didn't know and never asked for. Guys I met once and would never see again. Sometimes they were barely conversations, just exchanged looks across the bar, and then we would either head to the bathroom or leave together. It was dangerous and more than a little unsafe, but I think that was part of the appeal. I liked the carelessness of it all, but what I liked even more was getting to film all of it. Each time, without fail, I'd pull out my phone and I'd record whatever I could without showing too much of their faces or anything identifying. It was never about them anyway. I knew it was stupid, every bit of it. From the different men, to the lies I told Nico, to the fact that I kept the physical evidence of my betrayal in my phone. Every night I swore I'd delete everything as soon as I sobered up, and every morning I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I'd transfer everything onto a small USB drive I'd hidden inside my bedside table. It was a cheap little thing Nico had once used for work, something he probably forgot existed. It all became a kind of ritual for me. Late at night, when Nico was asleep beside me, I'd sneak out of our room and head to the guest room. There, I would plug the USB into my laptop and watch all the recent videos I'd transferred onto it. I became obsessed with it. Not the men, just me. It was me I couldn't stop looking at. Watching myself and my body like that gave me high like nothing I'd ever experienced. It was like adrenaline and validation mixed with something darker. I'd watch the clips until my eyes got tired. And it was only when I would crawl back into bed with Nico that the guilt would hit me. It always came in waves, and when it did, it felt too heavy to bear. Nico had always done everything for me. He'd built his life around making me happy. He cared about me in a way I'd stopped deserving the moment I let someone else touch me. And worse than the cheating was the fact that I was documenting it. I kept telling myself that I would delete them the next day, and then the day after that. But then the next day always came, and I'd find some new excuse to keep them. As the weeks turned into months, the guilt didn't go away. It just changed shape. Instead of it being this sharp ache, it became something constant and dull. And the worst part was that Nico never once suspected anything. He never questioned why I came home so late or why I showered before getting into bed. He was the Nico he used to be, caring and accommodating to a fault. But the more he cared for me, the worse I felt. He kept on doing so much for me each day, making me breakfast and always asking if I was okay, while I was betraying him in the worst possible way. I kept telling myself I would stop, that the next night would be the last, and that I'd delete the videos and pretend it all never happened. But the thought of never feeling that rush again felt unbearable. It scared me how much I needed it. It was almost like an addiction, the way I'd gotten so caught up in seeing myself like that. Then one morning, when I was hungover after a pretty bad night, I sat in the kitchen and I just watched as Nico took care of everything. He stood there in his work clothes and made us both something to eat. Then when we were done, he gave me some Tylenol and sat with me as I took them, rubbing my back and asking if I was okay. The whole thing nearly broke me. I fought the urge to just start sobbing right then and there. I almost couldn't breathe. And for the first time since I'd started cheating, I looked at him and thought, what am I doing? Why am I risking this? For what? It hit me so hard I had to excuse myself and go to the bathroom. It was in there that I finally cried until my eyes hurt. And after that, after I'd picked myself up off of the floor, I made a decision right there. I told myself I was done for real this time. I couldn't keep putting my marriage at risk, and I couldn't keep hurting the one person who had never once let me down. That night I didn't go out, and the next night I didn't either. I told my friends I needed a break. Luckily, they didn't question it much or try to persuade me because I'm not sure I could have held my ground if they did. So, for the first time in months, I stayed home for an entire week. I knew what the next step after that had to be. I knew that I needed to destroy the USB drive and get rid of everything. I took it out one afternoon while Nico was at work. I held it in my hand for the longest time, convinced that I would eventually throw it in the trash can, but in the end, I couldn't do it. It's embarrassing to admit that some little piece of metal and plastic had such a hold on me, but it's the truth. I just couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Destroying it felt like destroying the version of me I wasn't sure I wanted to lose. So instead, I told myself I'd delete the videos slowly, one at a time. I thought it would be easier for me than trying to get rid of them all at once. I didn't realize at the time how delusional I was being. I couldn't have known that I had doomed myself and my marriage the second I decided not to throw it away. I had no idea how quickly everything would fall apart. I didn't know that every night I'd lived so recklessly would come back for me all at once, and it would happen in the worst way imaginable. In the days after I promised myself I was done, I threw everything I had into Nico and spending more time with him. I didn't want it to seem forced, so I started with small things. I'd help him cook dinner or sit in the kitchen while he did. I'd ask him about work and his day. Then we started spending entire evenings together. Either we were doing separate things but staying beside each other, or we were doing something together. We would play cards and watch shows we hadn't touched in months. And the part that surprised me most was just how much I'd missed being with him. I felt like a fool because I didn't even realize how much until I was with him again. For the first time since everything began, I felt like I had made the right decision. I thought that stopping when I did had saved me and saved us. With everything behind me, I was free to prioritize Nico and us getting back to the way things were. Weeks went by like that, consistent, easy weeks that almost felt like early days of our relationship. And slowly, I let myself believe that everything would be okay. I was so sure that I had managed to get away with it. One of the lucky ones who had cheated but still got to keep the life they'd built. It was delusional, I know that now, but at the time it genuinely felt like I had been spared. But then came the night everything fell apart. It was a normal evening. I had just gotten back from a new temp job that I was working, and I was exhausted. I walked into the house and dumped my bag on the couch before dumping myself right next to it. I didn't even notice that I hadn't zipped the bag shut, or that the USB drive was sitting right at the top. The only reason it was in my bag at all anyway was because I started taking it with me after I got a job. Keeping it in the bedside drawer wasn't safe if only Nico was home. I couldn't risk it. We decided to watch a movie earlier that day, so Nico joined me in the living room once he heard me get back. I was so tired that I was practically drifting off as he searched for the remote so we could start. He was searching between the cushions for it, and at some point I heard the sound of my bag hitting the floor, but I was too tired to pay attention. I just listened as he packed all my things back up and announced that he had found the remote. He settled in beside me, but less than 30 minutes into the movie, I was asleep. When I woke up, the living room was dark except for the soft glow of the TV. I pushed myself up, groggy and confused, and spotted another light coming from the dining table. Nico was sitting there, laptop open in front of him. At first, nothing registered. I was still half asleep and disoriented. I walked toward him and asked what he was doing, but he didn't answer. He didn't even look at me. That was when I heard it, a sound that froze me where I stood. My own voice was coming from the laptop. It was the unmistakable sound of me from one of the videos. My throat felt tight instantly, and my stomach dropped as I heard my own moans loud and clear. I knew exactly what he had found. And right there, plugged into the laptop port, was the USB drive. It instantly became clear to me that Nico must have seen the drive when my bag fell down. He probably recognized it as his old one and wondered what was on it. He must have been expected old work spreadsheets or something, and instead he got dozens of videos of his wife sleeping with other men. I felt myself go lightheaded, like the floor under me wasn't stable. "Nico," I called his name, but my voice trailed off when he finally looked at me and I saw the disgust on his face. "Nico, please," I begged, already tearing up. "Please, it's not what you think." His voice was calm at first, like it always was. "All right," he said. "Then what is it?" I opened my mouth and nothing came out. There were no words, no explanations or excuses that could make sense of what he had watched, and I didn't even know how much he had seen. 1 video? 5? I had no idea how long I had been asleep. "I'm sorry," I finally choked out. I got caught up in everything, and the alcohol. It was a mistake. None of them ever meant anything to me." He shook his head, slow and steady, like every word I said just made him even more upset. He closed the laptop, pushed it away, and stood up. "I did everything for you," he said, his voice low but shaking. "Everything. I bent over backwards for you time and again. I let you live however you wanted. I trusted you, and I took care of you. But this whole time you've just been fucking other men." He finally snapped, and his voice got louder than I'd ever heard it. The tears started to pour after that, and I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. I know, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." He didn't yell often, hardly ever, but in that moment his voice was sharp and full of rage and heartbreak. "You came home and let me take care of you," he said, stepping closer. "You let me touch you knowing you had just been with someone else, and then you recorded all of it? You kept videos of it?" "Nico, shut up." The room went silent. He had never ever spoken to me like that, not once in all the years we'd been together. I was too stunned to say anything. "I don't even recognize you," he said, staring at me like I was something unfamiliar. "I don't know who I married. I don't know who you are." I tried to reach for him, but he stepped back like my touch burned. "All I know is that I can't stay married to a stranger," he said, "and a whore." My breath caught and I felt his words cut deep in my chest. He didn't wait for my reaction, though. He brushed past me and headed upstairs. I had no choice but to follow him. I stumbled after him, begging, crying, grabbing at him, but he shrugged me off every time. All I could do was watch as he grabbed a small duffel and shoved a few items inside it. Nico, please, just talk to me. I'll delete everything. I promise. I'll do anything. I begged, but he remained unfazed. He didn't even look at me. He walked past me with his bag in his hand, headed downstairs and out the door. I followed him barefoot, still sobbing and pleading with him to just listen to me and for us to try and work things out. He opened the car door and paused just long enough to look at me one last time. "You're free now," he said. "Go make all the videos you want." Then he got in, shut the door, and drove away. I collapsed on the front steps and cried until I couldn't see. I cried until my throat burned and until I felt empty and sick. It's been 2 days since, and I haven't heard a word from Nico. It's been 2 days of total silence. I've tried calling and texting, but he ignores it all. It's only now truly dawning on me that I really did lose him because of my selfishness. He's gone from my life. I don't know where he went or who he's with. I have no idea if he's safe or angry or filing papers right this second. All I know is that I'm alone in this house and I'm terrified about what's to come.